By that same logic, you'd think, oh, poor people should be more motivated because they're deprived of money. But that we don't see that in reality. Many poor people are not that motivated. So it would then follow, and I've seen some incredibly rich people who are wildly hungry for money. And so then it would follow that the deprivation comes from our reference point because money is intangible. And so it's how much do we perceive our deprivation around money? And so if all of my friends are billionaires and I'm worth $100 million, then I have a $900 million deficit that I have to come up. I'm $900 million poorer than the person who just is at $5,000 a month who wants to make $10,000 a month. I'm more motivated to make money than they are because I'm more deprived of it. And so in thinking about this, I then think, okay, what am I deprived of that motivates me to go get it? And also, when I want to try and judge the behavior of others or predict their behavior, I have to think, what things are they deprived of? Because it'll have a much stronger predictive power than trying to say, how do I motivate this person? Look at what they lack.
It's a much more accurate way to predict the things that people are going to chase after.
It's operationalized. What do they do?
So I found this quote from Timothy Leary, and it's really fantastic. I think that you'll like this. Find the others. Admit it, you aren't like them. You're not even close. You may occasionally dress yourself up as one of them, watch the same mindless television shows as they do, maybe even eat the same fast food sometimes. But it seems that the more you try to fit in, the more you feel like an outsider. Watching normal people as they go about their automatic existences. For every time you say club passwords like, have a nice day and weather's awful today, eh? You yearn inside to say forbidden things like, tell me something that makes you cry, or what do you think deja vu is for? Face it, you even want to talk to that girl in the elevator. But what if that girl in the elevator and the balding man who walks past your cubicle at work are thinking the same thing? Who knows what you might learn from taking a chance on a conversation with a stranger? Everybody carries a piece of the puzzle. Nobody comes into your life by mere coincidence. Trust your instincts, do the unexpected, find the others.
There's many Matrix undertones here. I think we might have covered this on a past podcast, but the idea that many people want to be exceptional, but they're afraid of being an exception, I think is such a it's wanting an outcome without the requirement that the outcome has. And so we can't do the same thing that everyone else approves of and then somehow get a different outcome that everyone else does. And so I think that's why high agency for me is something that I look for in other people, which is, asking someone, why do you believe what you believe? And we talked about this yesterday, but if you have a belief and you can't explain why you believe it, it's not yours, it's someone else's. And most people walk around parroting other people's words for the vast majority of their lives. And so they basically act as recorders where they clicked record at one point of their life and then they click play in another time in their life. And they're just clicking record, play, record, play, record, play over and over again. And the reason there's that, in my opinion, that other self that's behind it is because none of those words are yours. And so it makes sense that people feel alone and they feel like they're acting because they never say what they think. And as a result, they also sound like everyone else because they were never themselves to begin with.
It's those first three lines. Admit it, you aren't like them, you're not even close. And it sounds quite sort of self-aggrandizing or kind of narcissistic in a way to, you're considering yourself as being above other people. I don't think it's to do with that. I think it's that so many people curtail themselves and optimize for a mean that may not exist. They're reverting to a mean that's just a figment of everybody's imagination. And the only reason that people coalesce there is because other people think that other people are going to coalesce there. The Keynesian beauty contest? Same as that, basically.
I don't know what it is.
Oh, okay. So Keynesian beauty contest is people make judgments on not who they think is the most beautiful, but on who they think other people think are the most beautiful. And then knowing that other people know that other people are going to make that decision based on that, you end up with this infinite regress of trying to predict things. This is what's happening with politics, right? It's not about picking the person that you want in your area. It's about making the most tactical pick to ensure that overall, accounting for the other people and what they're going to choose, that the person that you really don't want in power doesn't get the seat in your area, but somebody else in some other area. So when you have this sort of recursive, but it happens socially too. I say the thing that I think that you want to hear, knowing that you know that I could say the thing that I want, but so what I say is some mediator halfway between what I want to say and what I think you want to hear from me. And it just ends up with people, nobody being themselves and everybody being some weird simulacrum of what they think everybody else wants them to be.
And if we go back to motivation, the question is, what, quote, motivates people to do this or to behave in this way? And so most times it's fear of something, right? And so they're afraid of something in their minds. But when you actually play it out, which is one of my favorite frames in the world, which is, let's take this to the hypothetical extreme, or let's play it out two more plays, two more turns. And most times you end up getting way closer to what you really want the moment after the bad thing that you think will happen happens. And so we've discussed that there's so many amazing things that have happened in my life and your life and many people's lives that happened immediately after they get out, they have something bad happen that gets them out of that realm of just barely good enough, but not really. And so we have this fear of disrupting the just barely good enough, but not really, but you're also already miserable. And so the fear of disrupting your misery feels ridiculous. And so when you think about it like that, right? So when you think about it like that, exactly, the only thing we have to lose is the current misery of mediocrity that we're trudging through every day. And so worst case, you're just also still miserable, but maybe you won't be mediocre anymore because at least you won't be like everyone else. But there's also a possibility that you are not miserable and also not mediocre. And by doing that, you might also just start seeing who you really are, because I think a great portion of our identity comes from the proof that we give ourselves of the things that we've done and said in the past. And so if we want to build towards a different version of ourselves, then it begins with accruing, stacking evidence that aligns with that future self. And so in some ways, break the plate, take the shot, get rejected. Well, because when you do that, then again, the worst case is you have a broken plate, but you didn't like that plate to begin with.
It is astounding how many people want to be spectacular in life, but also want to fit in and be normal. Like by being normal, you are by definition aiming for average. Normal people get normal results. Weird people get weird results. You literally can't do what everyone else does and not expect to get what everyone else has. By doing what everyone else does, you guarantee average results.
It's your brother, your mom, your friend, the one comment they're going to say, you've changed. Why are you doing another kick like this? Oh, you're going to try that now. Okay, here we go again. And the thing is that it's not about them being right or wrong. Again, it's about how right and how wrong they could be. And so, for example, let's say you wanted to start a podcast in the past and you did 3 episodes and then you fell off. And then they think, I told you so. Stop with these dreams. Stop with this crazy content stuff. You're never going to become an influencer or whatever your goal is. Replace influencer with whatever your thing is. The thing is that you are still closer having done 3 than having done 0. And so it's just about directional correctness and realizing that criticizers are more often correct, but when it matters most, incorrect. And so this is where frequency and intensity become flipped. So somebody, from the investment world, it's like, okay, if I take 10 bets and I lose 9, some people might say he must be a bad investor. But the question is, how much did I lose on the 9 and how much did I make on the 1? And the best investors in the world understand the benefits of outsized returns, both on the upside and the downside. And so, meaning the perfect way of betting is having no downside and having unlimited upside. You want to make as many of those bets as you can. And in the beginning, that is literally what you have. And so the problem is you have a bet that you take, you make 3 podcasts, and you didn't stick with it. And so then criticizer gets 1 point. But you lost nothing. You maybe even gained a little bit of skill. And you gain some experience, which means you're actually still better off than you were when you started. So it is a 0-loss game by choosing to begin.
That's the thing about cynics. Right 99% of the time and wrong 100% of the time.
I use this example because I think it really drives it home. So if you have judgmental parents or judgmental friends or judgmental whatevers, and you date people and you bring them home, if they say, I don't think this is the girl for you, they're right every single time, your entire life, except for the one person that you decide to marry. And then they are absolutely wrong at the time that it mattered most. And the thing is they get to say on your 6th girlfriend and 7th girlfriend and 8th girlfriend, because let's face it, you've been alive for a while. I have a perfect guess. I'm right 100% of the time. This roulette, we'll see how long this one lasts. And 2 years in, they're like, see, you finally broke up with her. I told you at the beginning it wasn't going to last. Well, it never fucking lasts except for the one that's going to stick. Duh. And the business never works until it's the one that does. And the episode doesn't take off except for the one that does. And whether it's 10 or 10,000, eventually one does, because when you do more, you get better at doing.
Which is why not quitting is the best skill.
And the only thing that matters. Because by default, with an infinite game perspective, which I encourage everyone to have, the point of the game is to keep the game going. It's the only objective. Because even if I obviously come from the business world, so even if your goal was to be number 1 at business, it's like, by what metric? Enterprise value, growth, profit, revenue, all of a sudden, okay, maybe it's richest man in the world. Okay, for how long? Look at the history of mankind. Not one person has ever been richest man forever. And so you get to touch the top, even if you're that one guy, for a moment, and then it's gone again. And so you can't have that as the endpoint, because it is by its very nature finite. But the competitor whose objective is to continue to play can't be beaten, because by playing, he wins.
This is why I think a lot of people have chips on their shoulders once they get to even a modicum of success, because everybody that starts off has this huge amount of escape velocity that's needed to be accumulated. They're starting from total inertia, lifting off where the gravity's strongest, going past all of these, the disbelief and the criticism and the lonely chapter and all of this stuff. So they've had to go through all of these trenches and get over all of these hurdles. And then they finally get to the stage where they're in a little bit more light altitude. They're floating out there a little bit more, and maybe their velocity gives them, or their fuel gives them more returns in terms of their velocity. And now people say, it must be nice for you. And you go, dude, fuck you. Like, if you could have seen how much criticism and hard work and lonely nights and all of this stuff when nobody was watching and I was unsure of myself, chronically miserable, and I criticized and all my friends took the piss out of me and I did all of these things. I had to go through all of that for you to now say must be nice. And that's why, Cameron Hanes carries this rock up a hill and it says poser on the back of it. It's 72-pound rock, and he carries it up a really, really steep hill. And he does it with, sometimes there's cameras around, but a lot of the time there's no cameras around. And he does that it's the only work that matters is the work that you do when nobody's watching.
The reason the goal isn't coming at you fast enough is because every person you've seen accomplish the goal, you only see it the moment they accomplish it. And the reason that it hurts so much when people are like, must be nice, oh, that happened overnight, is because every time you fail, no one cares and no one sees. But when you finally win, people take notice.
It's discredited.
But it's the only time they notice is when you actually win. And so to even further reinforce the point, the fact that everyone looks like an overnight success means that the 10 years where they sucked, no one saw. And so the fear that you have about people noticing the fact that you fail is ridiculous, because they're barely going to notice when you succeed.
Yeah. I think this is one of the reasons why tracking the journey, this is something that Chris Bumstead's done very well. You know, he's had his videographer Calvin with him for forever, essentially. And, you know, tracking autoimmune disorders and depression, and now his wife's pregnant and having a kid, and I got to come back and do, all of that. I think one of the ways that you can at least lighten the load or bring it into land a little bit more effectively is to construct that story arc. You know, the story of you sleeping in the gym and the cars go over the top and it makes the loud noise and stuff. That is an important part of getting people to buy into where you are now by proving that you were there when the line was flat, or actually somehow managed to break through the floor and go negative a number of times. And I remember I was watching Maisie Williams. She was Arya Stark in Game of Thrones. And somebody asked her what she wished that she'd done differently. And, you know, I think she starts on that show and she's 11 or 12. And it's all of the most formative years of her life until she's 21 or something, into a decade of doing this show. And somebody asked her what she wished that she'd done differently. And she started journaling, I think, in season 5, and there's maybe 9 seasons or something. And she had no recollection of what happened in the beginning. And she really wanted that. And I think that if there's a regret that I have with this show, it's that we didn't track more of what was happening behind the scenes from the very beginning. Partly for everybody else to show just how much shit I went through to kind of prove that, but more so for me to remind myself of where it was. And I'm sure that, you know, there's a couple of photos, you know, the bed in the corner of the gym, like, fuck, I wish like I had that, and I wish I had this, and I wish I had another one. You know, if you'd had Caleb with you the whole time, imagine how fucking...
I'd be poor and broke.
Yeah.
I never would have made it out.
Probably in fucking hospital as well, from being on the back of a motorcycle. But yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important to track that journey for yourself and for other people. But it does piss me off. Like, I wish that human psychology wasn't so easily manipulated. Like, when you see that trick, when you see if you go 0 to hero, even if you go 0 to hero to 0 to back to hero again, like, as long as you can construct that narrative sufficiently strongly for people, you can just get other humans to buy into you. But it hasn't changed what you did. It's just changed the way that you presented it to people and the story that you told. So when you start to see things like that, I find it disenchanting because it reminds me how fickle crowd mentality is. And it's why Ethan Suplee, big Hollywood actor, weighed 500 pounds or something, and now he's 260, and he used to play fat guy funny roles, and now he plays jacked bearded biker dude roles. And the reason that his transformation is so fantastic is that you know him from before and you know him now. But the dude that just gets in shape, or that goes through the silent, quiet challenge and didn't track the progress, gets none of the accolade despite going through all or maybe even more of the challenge.
So much to unpack. I'd say one of the strongest mental frames that has gotten me through my hardest times is thinking this will be the story that I will one day tell. And that means the harder it is, the bigger the dragon, the more epic the story, and by consequence, the more epic the hero. And if you think about the difference between winners and losers, winners define themselves by what they made happen, and losers define themselves by what happened to them. And the difficult part of the lonely chapter is that the Rocky cutscene lasts 90 seconds in the movie and lasts 5 years in reality.
With no promise of it ever ending. No guarantee of glory.
What's interesting about, and I don't like using the word psychology, but I'll say what's interesting about humans is that our ability to endure is very robust if we know that we'll make it out. And so they've done mice studies where they drop the mouse in and then they let it drown and it drowns really fast. and then they drop a mouse in, and then before it gets to the point where it drowns, they pick it up, and then they put it back in. And the second time they put it in, it can last like 20 times longer.
I think for the stats is something around will drown in less than an hour. If it's taken out, dried off, and allowed to relax, it'll swim for a day.
An absurd amount different. And so if I were to say, hey, I need you to hold your breath, but I don't tell you how long, 20 seconds in, you might be thinking, this is stupid. Is he going to stop? Is he going to wait for me to pass out? And all these stupid thoughts go into your mind. But if I say, I need you to hold your breath for 3 minutes, your lungs might burn, but you can see that there's this end that's coming. The difficulty with personal development and entrepreneurship is that you don't know when the end is coming, but you still need to fight like the second mouse who gets out, gets dried off, and gets put back in. And the only certainty that I can give you is that it's the same thing that every other mouse, every other person who got through that period went through. And you won't die. And if you do die, you won't care because you'll be dead. And so, best case, you win. Worst case, it won't matter.
It's the same mentality. It's the same reason why Uber works. The reason that Uber works is partly because you can get a car from anywhere, but the real reason is that you know when the car's going to arrive.
Mm.
You know, remember back in the day, you'd ring a taxi and then just wait. And you go, well, I mean, he's some far away. I don't know how far away. And then it ends up coming along. But we've mentioned it a couple of times today. A frame that I've used an awful lot over the last year or so is this is the price of doing business.
Mm.
So reframing things from bugs to features.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need to get into one of my nightclubs 10 years ago. There's an entry fee at the door. And this is the cost of doing business. I remember Facebook got the biggest fine in tech history, maybe 10 years ago or something like that. And they fined some obscene numbers, absolutely huge number. And somebody worked it out that it was like half of 1/4 of one territory's profit. And you think, well, I'm aware that in sort of absolute terms, this is a massive number, but in relative terms, they can just go, okay, well, we'll just factor this into the P&L and go through this. So thinking about the byproduct of things that other people see as a luxury that you have, reduction of privacy that comes along perhaps with increasing the size of your platform. And you go, okay, well, I can shout and scream and rail against this. People saying must be nice. You know, that's a good one. Fucking hell, that's a difficult one. I'm going to get people saying must be nice because I just got a promotion at work. And that's unfair because I worked hard for that. And I want them to say to me, well done. I know that you probably went through tons of hardship that I didn't see. Or, wow, you've really changed the texture of your mind due to all of that meditation that you did. I'm sure that 500 mornings in a row sat on a cushion in your bedroom in buttfuck nowhere, listening to Sam Harris speak in your ears was really, really tough. They're not going to say that. They're going to say, well, I mean, it's all right for you, man. You just don't seem to get angry that easily. And you go, dude, you know fucking nothing about me. You have no idea how hard it was for me to get from where I was to where I am now. But instead of seeing that as, you cannot change what other people are going to say, because that is the natural human response to minimize progress that other people have made in order to shorten the gap between you and them. Because if it's due to hard work, that's something that they could have done. If it's due to natural innate talent or genetic predisposition, that's something that they have no control over. So it shortens the gap of work and worth between you and them. So instead of seeing it as, oh my God, this is malignant and a personal curse and so fucking unfair, you just go, this is the price of doing business. If I want to be a mindful person, people are going to say to me, dude, you just seem so calm all the time. I wish I was like you. I wish I was built like you, but you know, I just had too hard of a childhood. Or, dude, you're doing so well at work. I wish that I didn't have the kids, or I didn't have those restrictions, or that my parents had taught me more about business. It's just the price of doing business.
You know, a fun frame with that is when someone says, must be nice, you can just say, yeah, it is. Or someone says, man, you must have exceptional genetics to have the body you have, and it just happens so easily for you. And you're like, yeah, it's sweet. And the thing is that if we were to just say, like, if we lean into it, right, to some degree, by leaning into it, you also eliminate a competitor, if you want to hear my ugly side. Because if I just affirm the fact that they think it happened overnight or that it was genetic or whatever,
it makes it more out of reach.
Right.
Yeah. I've thought about this. So this is such a good point. Such a good point. That somebody telling you, going David Goggins mode, and somebody saying, this is how hard I had to work to achieve this thing. Look at how hard I had to go through, and look at all of the setbacks I had, and look at just how in the red I was before I got to the black, before I got to the green. Just look at all of these things. People see that as a threat. People see that as a humble brag. But what it is a treasure map. This is where I was, and this is where I went. And me, with all of my inefficiencies and deficiencies and setbacks, got from there to here. You aren't even as far into the red as I was. So all of the talk, I understand why hustle porn kind of gets a cringe pushback from the world. But what it actually should be is an unbelievably empowering message that anybody can get from wherever they are to wherever you are. The much more disempowering one was, yeah, man, it just comes to me easily. So yeah, if you really want to fuck somebody up, tell them that it's ineffable. Tell them that it's ethereal and astral and you can't get here.
One of my favorite ways to help someone overcome an excuse or a limiting belief is to tell them I believe them. And so if I'm like, hey, why don't you double your prices? And then they give 4 reasons why they can't double their prices. And then I'll say, then you'll fail forever. And then they're like, well, no, because X, Y, and Z. And it's like, great. Glad we got there.
That's like your thing about only one person can be in the angry boat.
Yeah.
One person can only be in the negative boat.
Yeah. It's unbelievable how powerful that is. What's interesting about a lot of the discontent that we have around how people judge our success or achievement is that we have this unspoken demand that they have a visceral understanding of everything that we went through without having been there. And the problem with that is that if they understood everything, then they would have a complete understanding of how to do it themselves. And so it's making an impossible demand of strangers to somehow be successful already so that they can appreciate our success.
It's also removing your competitive advantage.
And so it's interesting, this is just for everyone who's listening, is that, Chris, you can probably attest to this, is that of the people that I've met in my life who've been extremely successful at any endeavor, there's this kind of, and I want to make a video about this, but it's what people say in the back room. And there are these common things that we say to one another that other people wouldn't believe. So we're like, they just don't get how much actual work it is to do a podcast like this. Like, you don't actually get that what 100 hours of preparation for one 1-hour event looks like. You can understand it conceptually, but when you actually set a timer and you only use that timer and you pause it when you stop working and you do 100 hours of work, all of a sudden by the end of that 100 hours, you have a very different understanding to the very granular level of what it takes to be great at anything. And that's 100 hours, not 10,000 hours, but 100 hours with feedback. And so everyone's like in the back room, they want this magic pill. They want to know the secret, but there is no secret. It's just hard work. But I think the thing that everyone who's listening lacks is the context on how hard work is, not in that it's complex, but just in that it's a continuous and unending focus on one thing and noticing the details that separate mediocrity from greatness. And if you're like, I don't know what the difference between those two things is, that is the opportunity that hard work reveals, is that it takes watching 10 hours of you presenting and then taking notes at every time that you say or that a transition between slides is unclean, or that the audience kind of gets lost there because I can see that there's no reactions to that. I should probably add a visual there. And then when you go slide by slide, realizing that, okay, I can put 1,000 slides together for 90 minutes of presenting if I really